I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the 4th generation G45 BMW X3, now in Australia. In mid-2024, I did a walk around of the G45 X3 when it was at BMW headquarters, and Dan Gardner drove the car in Europe last year, but this is the first time we have it on Australian soil, and we have essentially the entry-level car here with the not quite entry-level price because it does have quite a few options. This is the X3 20. No more no more xDrive crap. It's just a 2-litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder with standard all-wheel drive. So at the back, when we get there, we'll see it's just got a very neat little badge, X320, nice and clean. And that is also reflected in the styling of this vehicle as well. You get the new generation X3 with a bunch of stuff that it didn't have standard before. There are 4 main things that I can think of right now. They are the M Sport package, which is what is on this vehicle here, bumper bars included, which also includes standard adaptive M suspension. So you get the proper damping in the 2-litre in Australia as standard. You also get acoustic glazing in the windows, and you get the iconic glow grille. So at night time, this lights up in a not so subtle statement of the BMW kidney grille. If you don't want to be noticed in your vehicle, do not buy the new generation X3. This one here also has M Brooklyn grey paint, which I personally really like. It has a lot of blue in it, it looks really cool. And these wheels over here, it gets 19s as standard, but this car has these bi-colour M20s. They're a $2,000 option with Pirelli P0 tyres, 255 front, 285 back, because that's exactly what a 2-litre 140 kilowatt engine needs.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
We've already covered the new X3 styling in the past, but just as a brief, succinct summary, it is about less is more. It is about removing the crap from the car and letting its shape speak for itself. So there's no wheel arch extensions. It just has these sort of drawn-on arches. The front is meant to be subtle, and I actually think it looks pretty good. I love the strakes on the grille, love the new headlights, adaptive LED as standard. That all looks pretty good. Flush door handles here instead of the old pull type. Does have the same 28-65mm wheelbase as before, but it has a 16mm wider front track, 45mm wider at the back, 25mm lower, 29mm wider, so it's all a bit kind of right sized to make it a bit sportier and a bit cooler and a bit easier to see out of and a bit nicer to sit in and drive. The shape of the new X3 might be simpler, but the detail in the lights, particularly in these tail lights here, I think is really cool. This sort of textured trim-like pattern on the sides of the tail lights is reflected in the grille in the front. There's a cohesion to these details, which I think is pretty cool. I do like the look of the back of it. It's distinctly not X3. It looks a little bit like an old 1 Series, having the plate down in the bumper instead of in the middle here. And while you might think you open the boot by pressing the BMW roundel here, that's probably a bit too high for some people. It's down here. Notice the badge, X320. That's it. Super simple, nice and clean in here. 570 litres of space, which is 20 more than before. Beautifully trimmed, a bit of space under the floor. This really easy to use luggage cover here that's nice and smooth. It all seems pretty good quality, and this opens and closes pretty fast as well, which may be faster than the engine. As you would imagine from talking about the options fitted to this car, when outside the vehicle, there are a couple of options inside. It does have a $6,000 enhancement pack, of which the 2 main important things, in my opinion, are this full panoramic glass roof with an electric blind, and it does have a 15-speaker, 750-watt Harman Kardon surround sound stereo, which is pretty good. It's better than the 6-speaker one that's standard, I'd imagine, but in terms of it being amazing, there are better, but it's pretty good. It also has a comfort pack, which is $4,000, the main part of which, in my opinion, is the front active seat ventilation, which is easily accessed by pushing the climate control here, having the seat pop up, 3-setting cooling, as well as 3-setting heating, and it does get rear seat heating and steering wheel heating. This being the M Sport pack, all of this stuff that you see here is standard. So these fake leather trim with perforations with the Alcantara on the seats here, and has the M Sport steering wheel as well, which I still think is a bit too thick. It does make your thumbs ache when you're cornering. It is not the thin BMW steering wheel of old, but then this is not the BMW interior of old. This is very much a new style interior with a new way of thinking. The repackaging of this X3 for the G45 generation, I think, works really well. The dash is quite short and kind of svelte. It is nowhere near as bulky as before, and it makes the X3 feel kind of compact, even though it is now 1920 millimeters wide. So it is not a small vehicle, but in here it feels kind of compact. The layout of all of this, I wish it was a little bit cleaner and less fussy. My main gripe with the interior, aside from some of the lower plastics not being amazing, or some of these ones on the door here, they're all nice and smooth, but they don't scream expense, is this My Modes thing here. It comes up kind of when you start the car every time. You can go through here: personal, sport, efficient, expressive, relaxed, digital art. You hit digital art and it brings up all of this other stuff on the dashboard here, certainly when the car's running. But you can access the drive modes just by pulsing the drive lever from drive into sport, and you can feel the steering weighting change, feel the throttle tuning change, and feel the damping change. So thankfully, you don't need to touch this. Whoever came up with that at BMW should go back to a day spa and curate candles, because that is not really my idea of a premium performance SUV. As for this sort of stuff here, the dual phone holder with a wireless charging on the left, the cup holders there, the door bottle holders in the door that fit this whole entire thing there, having all of the controls moved into column stalks, but none of this really being too haptic, so that's not too bad. The individual ventilation adjustment on the door there and there, that all works pretty well. Great seats, great vision, nice and refined, but I don't know whether all of this interior is quite as premium as some people might like. If it were me, I would option the knitted cloth option thing that goes up and over the dash here, makes all of that cloth and makes all these parts of the door cloth. Because we have the comfort pack in this X3, we do have things like these rear door sun blinds, which are pretty cool, and we do have rear seat heating. The thing is, the comfort in the back of this car is actually really good. I think this row is where the new generation X3 starts to hit home, because this seat's comfort is excellent. Even though we're sitting on the BMW vinyl, it is really good in under thigh, elevated over the front, theatre style seating. So I've got an awesome view out in front of me, looking at these sort of Alcantara clad headrests that do slide forward and back. I forgot that when I was sitting in the front. Netted mat pockets, our own ventilation here with auto manual temperature adjustment, 2 USB-C chargers, and doors that again take full-size bottles, so 1.5 litre bottles front and back. All of that is really great. Plus the great view out of the roof here, which again is part of that option package. I don't think some of these lower grade plastics are as evident in the back seat. So the backs of these seats here with all this plastic here and the plastic on the doors isn't quite as obvious as it is in the front. And you know what? It doesn't really matter in terms of affecting the packaging space in this vehicle. Even the middle seat is kind of okay, even though we do have this huge transmission tunnel here, because this is essentially a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and we do have a fold-down armrest here to match with the doors to provide an even greater seat. The combined fuel consumption figure for this mild hybrid X3 2-litre is 7.5 litres per 100 kilometres, and amazingly we have averaged 7.6 litres per 100 kilometres, though on a trip from Sydney to Bathurst and back it averaged 6.6. So as per great BMW turbo petrol 4 cylinders, this thing is extremely efficient. The servicing in a 5-year, 80,000 kilometre plan is $2,475. The warranty is 5 years on limited kilometres. While this new generation X3 is very much a development of the previous generation car, still uses the same CLAR platform, still has the same length wheelbase, essentially still has the same drivetrains, although modern developments of both the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder are 48-volt mild hybrid engines now. So they do have a degree of electrification and they are very efficient. Certainly this 2-litre is here. The engine itself is not a powerhouse. 140 kilowatts from 4,400 to 6,500 RPM, 310 Newton meters from 1,500 to 4,000, which is the more important number, to be honest. The 0 to 100 claim is 8.5 seconds, and it very much feels that. And that is with an 8-speed automatic, an excellent 8-speed automatic, mind you, which is giving the X3 everything it has. And here we are too in a car that is stronger and yet also lighter. It's 1,855 kilos in this spec here with standard all-wheel drive. And so it's doing its best to finesse what it already has, and I think for the most part it does an excellent job at doing all that stuff. The engine itself is smooth, but like I said, it isn't extremely powerful. It is best at driving at normal speeds because the automatic is so slick, it is imperceptible in its changes. And when you need everything it has, it really does ring the engine out well, at which point it sort of whirs away in the background and isn't unpleasant, but isn't inspiring either. It does feel like a 2-litre engine in quite a big SUV, and that is essentially what it is. If you want sport mode, which means you don't have to go through those ridiculous my modes in the screen, you just pulse the gear lever here into sport, and instantly you have the steering, the throttle response, the damping, and all of that does give it a little bit more oomph. But for the most part, you can just leave it in drive and leave the dynamics in normal, not in sport. It doesn't need any of that stuff. It doesn't take long, or certainly just one corner, to feel the poise in this chassis. You go in here, you can feel that the back end is instantly in play. It does have a rear bias in the drive split, and with that wider rear track, and just the general improvement, or certainly finessing in the elastokinematics and all that stuff in this suspension, improved steering. We have the variable ratio sport steering in this car here, so it does turn in quite well without being nervous. All of that blends together surprisingly well. This X3 here, this M Sport on the optional 20s, doesn't really crucify the ride at all. It looks good on the outside, and it finally drives as well as it looks. This is a completely doable package, providing you're okay with the relatively modest performance of the 2-litre engine. The ride quality, for the most part, is entirely livable. There is a degree of knobbliness, but it really isn't anything like you would expect, given the tyre spec and the wheel size, and the fact that it has M Sport adaptive suspension. So, finally, we have a new generation BMW that doesn't require a tertiary education degree to be able to go through all of the options and specs to pick out the right model, because this car has been product planned properly for our market, because everyone wants the M Sport pack, but they don't deserve to have the non-adaptive ride, which has generally been the kryptonite in these BMWs, and that is not the case here. Comfort-wise, these M Sport seats are excellent. The only criticism I have against them is that the optional fan cooling that this car has is really quite noisy. And so I thought, geez, this air conditioning is loud, but it's not the air conditioning, it's the seat. And so I've turned it off right now, and this car is instantly quiet. And that's another thing. Standard acoustic glazing does give the X3 a degree of refinement, and all of that, combined with the poise, the newfound handling fluency, that genuine sense of driver appeal and finessing and polishing, is what makes something feel premium. And this X3 is clearly the best medium SUV to drive, premium or non-premium. The only real areas of complaint, I would say, is that some of the lower plastics betray the fact that this X3 has been very much designed to be cost effective for the rest of this decade, and those plastics just aren't higher quality enough. They seem to fit reasonably well, except for that panel on the door here, which is a little bit loose, but it just doesn't quite fit the brief of the rest of the car. It lets the X3 down a little bit. And the instruments. BMW used to be known for the best instruments in the world, and these sort of arrowhead kind of dials, you can't even get a tachometer in the pack unless you put it in sport mode. You can choose various layouts, but they're all kind of just varying degrees of nothing much. It just isn't as easy as before, and I wish that someone would come in who just knows cars, who isn't some design-led wellness guru, and had an idea that people might want to look at a really nice speedometer and tachometer, or maybe know what the trip computer data is of their car fairly easily and be able to access their drive modes properly. Otherwise, new X3 is great. Included in that assessment is the safety systems. You wouldn't even know they're there. For the most part, you hear almost nothing. There's a little bit of lane nibbling on the steering when you might need a bit of lane assistance. Occasionally it shows a red car in the instrument pack. Sometimes it flashes the forward collision warning, certainly on my driving, but for the most part, they're not even there. And as we've been saying a lot recently, the definition of premium is the subtlety and the efficacy of these systems, and the X3 is one of the best. It is interesting to watch the progression of the BMW X3 from its genesis 20 years ago to where it is now, essentially the best-selling vehicle in BMW's entire lineup. Whether it has deserved that level of popularity, I would say no. The first generation was an absolute turd. We had a 3-litre sport package on staff that everyone hated driving. And now here we are here with the 4th generation car with the full M Sport pack, 20-inch wheels, all that sort of stuff. And finally, putting all of the sporty stuff on the car doesn't completely crucify the car's ride or its dynamics or all of that at the altar of looking good. This does both. In fact, BMW's aim with this X3 was to make it the best driving car in its class, and it is clearly head and shoulders better than the 3rd generation X3 in terms of the way that it corners, its handling poise, its ride, its steering response. All of that stuff is great. Whether the inside completely wins over everybody is debatable, but you can't dispute the seat comfort that it has, the room that it has, the high quality feeling that it has, and at least in my opinion, the way that it looks. This is an X3 that deserves to be a good selling BMW, and I think it actually is a better car than its chief competitors. Let us know what you think in the comments. Have you always kind of hated the X3 like I have? Do you think a 3 Series Touring is a much smarter alternative, which is what I always thought? And what do you think of us actually rating this latest generation X3? Do you like the way it looks? Do you like chasing cars? Let us know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.